Business dashboards often include sections which involve a comparison of actual and budget. And when you update the dashboard for a particular month, such as November, you might want to look at that actual versus budget comparison on perhaps gross profit percent over the prior 6 months. And also look at actual sales over a 6-month period. Here we're using sparkline charts for these particular trends. I particularly like these mini column charts because they show how many out of the last 6 months you exceeded budget, which months they were, and by how much. But it can be difficult bringing actual and budget data together so they can be compared side by side, especially with the pivot table. That's because they typically come from different sources. And it's mostly the case that budget data will not be stored at the same degree of detail as actual data. In the PowerPivot model that supports this data, we have revenue data by packaging, by product key, by country, by month, and it's spread across accounts like sales, commissions, discounts, and so forth. Conversely, the revenues budget data is less detailed and is by month, by country, and by account. So although the level of detail in both those tables doesn't match, as long as we're doing a comparison of actual versus budget by country and by month, which are common to both of those tables, then we should be fine. To get the ball rolling then, here are a couple of basic pivot tables I've created from the 2 PowerPivot tables, one for actual and one for budget. Next, I'm going to convert these to cube formula reports. So I'll clean this up a bit, simplify it, and insert some blank columns. One other thing, I've got actual data for Middle East and Africa, which is a new sales territory, but I haven't got any budget data for that, so I'm going to exclude that for the moment. Now I'm going to move the budget data next to the actuals. I can do this because this data is being pulled by cube value functions, which are like any other Excel function, so I can cut and move them. But we have to be a bit careful because when you do a trace precedence on these, you'll see that the actual data is pointed here for the territory, whereas the budget data is pointed across here. At this point, I'm going to do some rearrangement of formulas. But first, I want to put in some titles for actual and budget. I'm also going to put these 2 labels and cut them and put them here, and the corresponding ones for budget, cut those and put them there. And I've added some generic row labels, sales and gross profit, which aren't being used by the cube value functions right here. Now I'm going to do some surgery on this group of 4 cube value functions. Some of it is repointing the parameters, and some is changing the absolute and relative addresses of the parameters. In this cube value function, I'm going to make the reference to B10, which is to actual sales. I'm going to make that fully relative. So press the F4 key, and there you go. So that's all the changes I'm doing to the actual cell. I'm now going to go over to the budget cell, and similarly I'm going to make C10 fully relative. Press F4, that points to budget sales. I'm going to make L1, which is the month, I'm going to make it point to B1, which is the month we use for actuals, make that absolute. And L4, which is the sales territory, I'm going to point to this one here, and I'm going to make that column relative. So what that all allows me to do is to take these two cells and copy them into this position, and then take this whole piece, copy that, and paste, paste, paste. Now I can delete this stuff. I can apply some formatting. Zooming in, I can now hide these rows. And so there's the basic outline for my actual versus budget dashboard. This is still linked to the database, and if I change this to December, then I get the December numbers, and obviously that's not a very satisfactory way to choose the date, so we want to link that up to a slicer. But I'll cover that in part 2 of this video, along with adding sparklines and status indicators for our KPIs. The cells in the rows that were previously hidden I call cube function helper cells, and I've actually created a formatting which I use to color these cells so that I know what they are, and as I say, they eventually get hidden. The important takeaway here is manipulating your cube value functions and adding these cube function helper cells to make it easy to operate on a small group of functions, 1 or 2 maybe, and then copy those functions into the rest of your report, and then your report gets built very quickly. What you need to do is just make sure that these first few functions are built correctly and have the right absolute and relative addressing. And if you set these up correctly, it means that maintaining your report is quite easy. For example, when Middle East and Africa comes online, you can simply take this section, copy it, and then change this part to MEA, and there are your numbers for Middle East and Africa. We don't have any budget numbers yet, but our actuals are coming through. And if you're using Excel 2013 and you have the data model but not the PowerPivot add-in, you can still use cube value functions to build a dashboard in this way. More information on Excel's built-in business intelligence functionality can be found at excelcraft.com.